Hey everyone, tarekith here, and today I wanted to kind of continue exploring the role in MC707. Last time I was talking about my live set that I'm working on and covered some of the synthesis functionality. Today I want to go a little bit more in depth into the drum programming and some of the sequencer functionality. If you remember from last time, basically I've got 8 songs I'm working on. Each horizontal row here is its own song. Since last video, I've done a little bit of sound design on some of the sounds I had. I'm getting a little happy with how things are turning out. I'm still really happy with how the 707 sounds in general. Um, I'm going to play through these really quick so you can kind of see where we're at, and I'm going to pick one of the patterns, basically one of the songs, if you will. I want to do some drum programming and kind of spice things up there. So here's where we are right now with the sound of the set. Okay, so that's just a kind of a quick overview of like the sound I'm sort of going for in this real spacey, atmospheric. It's also quite repetitive. Partially that's on purpose. I want this kind of like hypnotic music. Also, just the pure functionality of a groove box being pattern based. You know, you're going to get it turning out a little bit loopy sounding. I want to kind of spice it up a little bit today, though. I think on this last sort of song I played for you, I'm going to go back and start editing the drums to kind of add a little more variation to them. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually just mute everything that's not drums. First 3 tracks for me are drums, the rest are synths. So this first track is kick and snare. The second track, the light blue one, is like more just percussion sounds. And the last track is cymbals, and that's usually how it is across all of my songs, just so I know what's what. Um, One of the things I keep running into actually that I'm noticing again here on the 707 is that there's a functionality here. You can duplicate your sequences. So right now you can see over here, the sequence is basically 4 bars long, 1 LED for each bar. I had actually gone through this entire set and set all of them to 8, and for some reason I keep turning the 707 on. And the sequences that were originally shorter that I duplicated to be longer keep going back to that original setting. It's weird. I can't really pinpoint it. It doesn't happen every time, but there's been a few times as I'm working through the set that keeps happening. I haven't actually lost any data. It's not actually erasing anything other than the duplicated state of those clips. They were originally some of these, like this percussion one. I mean, it's only 1 bar long, and that's how it was originally. But for some reason, when I duplicate it, it doesn't seem to stick. So to duplicate things, you hold function and then press the measure right button. Now it's 2 bars. Now it's 4 bars. Now it's 8 bars. And you can see there's only 4 buttons to tell you which measure you're in currently. The brightly lit one is what you're currently editing. But even though there's only 4 lights, you can still see all 8 of the measures. So if I press this to advance through the pages, you'll see now this arrow button lights up for the last 4. That means I'm in the last 4 measures of the 8-bar pattern. That's number 5. And now this button lights up to show that you're in the first 4. So a few people were curious how you could have 8 measures on this, even though it only had 4 lights for telling you what measure you're in, and that's how they do it. There's also a counter across the top. These lights light up as the measures progress. So I can see measure track 1 has got 8 bars because the lights are lighting up very slowly. Track 3, however, that's only like a 1 bar pattern. You can see over here it's only 1 bar. So this is nice to let you know, like as you're playing the set, like where you are in each clip on each track, in kind of like a relative way. So one of the first things, let's see, let's go ahead and we're gonna make this track 3 my cymbals track. Let's make that 8 bars long too. All right, now that's lit up, so I know that's the first 4 of 8. Make sure this stuck, and we need to make the first track 8 bars too. That was only 4 bars. Again, I'm not sure why this keeps happening. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I thought that would be stored when you save the project. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is probably go to like the last measure. There's 8 bars, the eighth measure, and start adding a little bit of fills and turnarounds that kind of keep it interesting every time that pattern loops. I'll just do that for different tracks, and yeah, follow along. Okay, so one of the things I just did here, which is I really like about the 707, is if you hold down a step button, this is basically your 16 steps per measure that you can have, like up to at least. If you hold down a step that you've entered, you get more parameters. You can change the velocity, you can change the start point, not within the sample, but actually like you can shift the note forward or backward around a perfect grid, which is nice. This feature I like a lot, this mute feature. It's basically like a probability for how often that note would sound. So I've got an 8-bar pattern. And I set the mute probability to 50%. So one time it'll play, the next time it won't. So in effect, even though it's only an 8-bar pattern, now I've made it 16 bars because this drum will sound like every 16th bar. And the 808, or I'm sorry, the 707 seems to be pretty smart about how it does that. The probabilities seem to kick in more where they would make sense at like even multiples of the pattern, if that makes sense. So I think Roland did a really nice job implementing that. And then the other thing you can do is sub-steps. So I'll go back to my first bar just to make this easier to demonstrate. But let's take the second drum hit and do a sub-step. So basically you can do like stutters. And you can also do flams as well. So that's pretty nice. That was also really, really useful on the TR-8S. So I think they've done a really good job of implementing that here. One of the other things we can do is you can actually change like the what they call the last step and the first step. So let's go like to the percussion track. And I'll just play this. What you can do is I've got this set up to be 8 bars, right? But I can actually set the last step to do like polyrhythms. So if I go shift and record and into this like step mode, this plays the last step. So it's only like 5 steps long, this pattern now. You can also set the start point of a pattern, like a starting step, I guess you want to call it, by holding shift and just pressing one of these. And you can reverse it too. It seems like it just reverses the start and end points if you do that. This is actually a really nice performance feature too, because while you're in this mode, if you want to like just jump out of it really quick, so you can do this like crazy buildup with like different start and end points within each sequence, and you just hit clear, and it just deletes it and goes back to where it should be. And then to exit this kind of start and last step mode, you just hit exit. So that's pretty interesting. Let's see, let's go back to my percussion sounds again. And I'm going to unmute these. So it's kind of a little buildup as that transitions over and the pattern loops. Let's see what we can do here on the cymbal page. One thing I kind of pointed out, before with the first step and last step, and you can also do that like per track. So if I go up to the track settings, I'm sorry, per clip. Let's go back down where we were. I'm just navigating this grid here. On a per clip setting, you can actually add shuffle per clip. You can change the step length. So right now it's 128 because it's 8 bars long. You can change the scale of the steps as well. Right now they're 16th notes. You can go higher, slower. So maybe that's another way to kind of get possibly 16 bars. Oh no, it actually changed the step length for me when I did that. So you still can only have 8 bars. And you also change the direction, the playback direction of the pattern. So you can reverse it, forward and reverse. So it goes back and forth. There's also a random mode. Unlike the first step and last step, like this isn't something you can kind of easily undo like in a performance. So you'd have to go back into the clip settings and turn this on or off. It's not really that hard. Like, once the clip is selected, then you just use this C4 knob to select setting and press on it, and you can change these things around. So anyway, just wanted to point another feature out there. So yeah, so basically now what I'm going to do is go through, and I'm going to go through all those patterns I showed you earlier, and I'll do this to the drums. I kind of add different kinds of variations. Just to kind of mix it up. As you probably heard here, some of these are really, really subtle. Like I'm not going for like necessarily like in your face sort of drum fills. I just want to kind of break up the monotony of that repeating one bar loop, so it's a little more interesting. One of the things I kind of discovered too that I have to dive into a little deeper as far as like the drum programming goes. Let's see, let's go back to our kick drum. Back out this. So say you wanted to change the kick drum, like you found a kit you liked, but just the kick drum's not working it for you. So you hold shift and press sound, just like on the synth page. That's how you enter like the drum edit mode. And this gives you like a real kind of quick overview. You can see as I play these sounds that get selected here, different pads on screen. Here's the kick one. You can change 8 parameters pretty easily. The level, course tuning, the release time, reverb. If you press function to go to page 2, then you get your fine-tuning pan, envelope mode. There's a no sustain and sustain. Basically, if you were to press the pad and hold it down, it would actually sustain for as long as your finger is held. If you have it set up to no sustain like I have right now, then the sustain just plays the entire sample or the entire sound like it would normally. You don't have to hold it down. It just triggers it once and keeps going. And then you can also do your delay settings. Basically, this is a delay send. That's a really nice kind of quick overview of some parameters you're going to change quite frequently. But if you want to dive in and go down the rabbit hole yet again with drums, you just press enter. And from here, you can go to instrument select. You can load a preset from the regular preset list. If you have a specific project, say you've got like one project just full of kick drum clips, you can load it from that project. Or a WAV file, if you have like WAV file samples on the SD card, you can load it this way as well. So if you want to put all your drums on there, you can use your own drum samples. One thing to point out, I don't have any samples on here myself, but the 707 does not support folders when it comes to sample loading. Basically, you have to put all of your samples just in the root drive. So this isn't the kind of device you want to put like 1,000 samples on, just because you'll have to scroll forever to find anything. So it's more about having like a nicely curated selection of samples, maybe one specific just to that project. You put those in the root directory of the SD card, and then you can browse and load them onto all the different drum pads. That's basically how you load different drum sounds onto each pad. There's not just drum sounds. They have some other like instrument samples and things you can use. So if you like this kind of 16 pad layout but don't actually want to use it for drums, you have something else more creative in mind, you can do that. We also have the instrument edit. This is where you really, really get deep into editing the individual drum setting. And when they say that, they mean the actual pad, basically whatever's assigned to this pad. Actually, I'm going to cover pad edit first really quick. So pad edit, you can edit the characteristics of every single pad in a kit. You press enter. There's an EQ per pad, which is really handy. So like on this kick drum, the low end's pretty high, so I'm going to retain that a little bit. Just the super, super subs on it. So this is per pad. You have your own EQ per pad, which is really, really handy. And there's also like a quick overview of like all the different control settings for each pad too, like your level, pan, delay, reverb, all that kind of stuff, as well as like all your mute group assigned. So if you do like the cymbal choking thing, you can see the cymbals here are assigned to mute group 1, and that's where you would set it up. So that's the pad settings. Again, it's an EQ per pad, which I think is really useful. The instrument edit, this is the instrument that's assigned to the pad. As you can see here, there's a lot of parameters. You can have up to 4 samples or 4 different drum sounds per pad. You can have those velocity switch. There's a way to kind of randomly switch between them. So every time you press the pad, it randomizes which sample or which wave you have selected will be playing. There's a common setting. You can set, you can choose from categories, the volume, the key, you can pitch things. There's alternate panning that you can set up. It does automatically. It'll just pan left to right how much you want it to happen. There's random panning. Let's see what else in here. There's also, you can change the velocity curve of each individual pad if you want. Here's the 3 different wave shapes you can pick, either samples or the internal sounds. It's off right now. You turn the wave switch on to turn it on. You can load stereo samples. If you want to do mono, load it to the left channel and it'll play in both speakers. But turn the volume up. So I'm laying this with the cymbals, you can hear. So there's a lot of flexibility here. I mean, you can really shape your kits in great detail. You get to the filter, you can do different filter types, velocity curves for the filters, velocity sensitivity for the resonance. You have pitch envelope, you have a filter envelope, you have your amplitude envelope. And again, this is per pad, and you can do this on every single one of the pads. And I haven't confirmed it yet myself, but I've heard actually that if you hook a MIDI keyboard up to the input of the 707, you can actually access more than 16 drum sounds per kit. I guess a lot of the stock kits actually have more sounds than that. I haven't confirmed that myself, but I've read a few people talking about that. So yeah, there's a really powerful drum sequencer and playback device built into the 707. I want to experiment some more, I think, with kind of the random velocity switching for the samples to have like hi-hats that kind of change like randomly every other time. I think that'll add a lot of variety. And the fact you can do like random velocity amounts and stuff like that as well. Really cool. Anyway, again, that was kind of a quick overview of some of the functionality here, some of the things I like about the 707 when it comes to drums and rhythm programming. There's a lot more there, a lot more settings. You can colorize the pads any colors you want, things like that. But maybe I'll cover that in another video so I can keep this kind of short. Keep tuning in. I will come back maybe next week with some more thoughts on the 707 and possibly eventually maybe have a review done by then. Probably not. See you soon.